How's the stash?
Glorious.
That's what I'm talking about.
Live from downtown Nashville, Tennessee.
This is StacheCast. Let's go.
Welcome to our ridiculous sports show.
Hello, everyone.
It's a frat party at a golf course.
That was one hell of an intro. I enjoyed every minute of that.
Come on, do you even want to win?
He's like running into a 12-story building.
You want to talk about a whooping on national television?
I'm not playing for the next 2 hours. Bring me some chicken.
StacheCast, baby.
That's right. This is StacheCast, and a very special episode of StacheCast today, as it is our 148th Preakness Stakes betting special. We are tiptoeing into new territory here, gonna be honest. But that's what we do, right? We get outside our comfort zone, we learn some new things, and we are blessed to be able to pass those things on to you. So thank you, as always, for being here. As you know, this is StacheCast, presented by Nashville Stache, from downtown Nashville, Tennessee. And I am joined by two gentlemen today that are going to lead the way into a new horizon, which is horse racing. Leaning a lot on my guys here. We tried to do a special for the Derby. It didn't work out, so why not the Preakness, right? We welcome back Scott Ward. We love Scott. Thank you for being here, good sir. And I am so glad to finally be able to work it out and get Kevin Humpich on the line. Kevin is here to offer his expertise on horse racing and different tips and help us. I'm a beginner. I'm not gonna front at all. I'm a beginner, but I'm looking forward to getting an education on horse racing from Kevin. Kevin, tell me a little bit about how you got into betting on horses.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Nick. Thanks for having me on the show. Look forward to giving everybody a base. I mean, the best thing about horse race gambling is they even have horse racing over in Japan that you can bet on. So it doesn't matter where you are in the day. If you're a third shift worker, you could still bet on horse racing in Japan. So there you go. It can be as slow as you want or as fast as you want, and that's the best thing about it. But
any time of day, it doesn't matter what time zone. There's always something. Whether you're in Del Mar, California, or whether you're in Tokyo, Japan, somebody's racing horses, and you're there to bet on it. So, kick me off real quick with where would someone go bet on horses if they didn't know? Because you can't go to DraftKings or FanDuel or one of those types of places and bet on horses, right?
Yeah, it's really easy. But so I'll start at the app owned by Churchill Downs. It's called Twin Spires.
Mm-hmm.
It's an app,
free
app on iPhone, and it's all inclusive. And the reason, again, backing up a little bit, I was born and raised in Lousiville. My dad owned little cheap racehorses when I was growing up, so I was always out at the track. And I actually, even though I wasn't legally able to do it, I was up there placing bets because all the tellers knew me at 13 years old. Yeah. I could barely even reach my hand up there, and betting the bare minimum on stupid horses. But so I have a long history, and I've seen trends change. And but horse racing's unique in that we are betting on animals. They can't tell you when they're sick.
Right.
They can't tell you when they hurt. They can only show some physical signs that that people try and read, just like in anything else. But when they don't feel like running, they don't feel like running, no matter the analysis you have. So you throw all the variables into it, and then you just throw in the factor of a horse just not feeling very good today, not feeling like doing it.
Didn't feel it.
Yeah, but they are bred. The reason they're called thoroughbreds is because they have a champion's heart. Almost all of them have the heart of a champion, and they want to frankly beat the other horse. They want to win.
It's instilled in their DNA to get out there and win.
That's correct.
I'll tell you this. Like I said, I don't know a ton about horse racing. I've always watched it when it came up. I like going, the Derby's fun. I lived in California for a while, and there were some places to go and watch around LA and down in obviously San Diego. And it was always a good time, but it was more of the scene than it was the races. Obviously, we have steeplechase here in Nashville, but again, it's more of the scene than it is the races. But I've always been curious about the racing part and the betting on it part, because there's a lot of, it's not like anything else. You can bet on the winner, obviously, right? You can pick which horse you think is going to win. And that seems to be the most straightforward. but kind of open the door to what all you can bet on in horse racing. Because I mean, you hear words win, place, show, trifectas, this, that, the next thing. Like, give me a baseline for getting into horse racing.
Very good. Yeah. So because just like every other betting, every other sport, whatever you bet on, you need some sort of system around, the type of wagers that you could make. And then you attach yourself. You don't bet all the types of wagers. You stick to the ones that you like and have had success with. Yeah. So to give you the baseline, to win, that's simplest form. And you are just betting on that horse has to come in first place. And so like the Preakness this weekend on Saturday is 8 horses. So then that opens up a variety of other bets. Place. If you bet the place, you get the money, whether you get first place money and second place money if they come in first. And you get only second place money if they come in second only. So first they get first and second.
So does a place bet have 2 separate sets of odds?
No. The payout obviously is not as great because you're gaining an extra place in line, extra spot in the result line. And then the same concept is added to a trifecta, which then you're picking first, second, and third place.
Okay. And they have to come in that order?
So that's where it gets really interesting and where you really develop wagers around that, because you do what's called wheeling and keying around possible horses. You can bet that straight to win, but that's the cheapest bet on the board, and the odds of that hitting that are astronomical. So let's say you like one horse to win a lot and 4 different horses to come in second and third. Well, then you could key that horse on top and then make other bets. Now you have to pay for those bets, but then you don't have every combination because you think that one horse is going to win. So it maximizes your
so it's a modified round robin almost.
Yeah. So I went a little deep there on that, a little deep dive on that, but
no, but that makes sense. That makes sense. We were talking about in the last episode. We were talking about baseball betting, and we were talking about how to mitigate some of the risk in some of the parlays, how to take bets that have higher odds, and how to put yourself in an advantage if 1 or 2 of them hit, as opposed to having to have all 5 or all 6 hit. So this sounds to me like you have the opportunity to bet on everything similarly to the baseball. Is you can go straight up as this is the horse I think is going to win. Correct. And you can get as complicated as I think this horse is going to win. And I think it's going to be some combination of these other 3 or 4 in the 1, 2, 3 spot. And you can split it up and have a bunch of different bets that give you a different.
That was a very good summary. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that seems.
Too bad you can't bet on a horse to finish last, because I've done that quite a lot.
Well, I feel like that would be me. To say this horse is going to win. I would probably analysis by paralysis in the horse betting. But one of the things that was cool, and that as I did a little bit of research on this, and Scott had sent a video over to me, which was fantastic. So I appreciate you sending me that, Scott. But it really kind of focused in on a specific strategy called the speed and class system. And I didn't understand what it meant until I got into the video. And because the guy was using TwinSpire and it had specific analytics inside the app when you're on the computer or on your phone.
That's correct.
To be able to actually see where these horses rank in different categories. So the analytics that you would need to decide whether you thought a horse might win or not was pretty much right there at your fingertips. But the term analysis by paralysis is one that we talked about in the baseball thing as well, being like, okay, you can dig in to a point to where you just, you get in your own way. So when you talk about all the analytics and all the stats that are out there, what are the ones that you focus on, and what are the ones that are just kind of noise that you really don't pay any attention to?
Well, obviously speed and class are the top 2. And so that was Scott, that was a good thing you sent the stash. And what it is, what it's attempting to do is level the playing field, as I mentioned earlier, of all the horses that were in previous races to the one they're in now. And all those horses were in previous races, not necessarily, but for the most part. And they're all coming together into this race. So how do we level the playing field from a gambling perspective in figuring out, even though they were at different parts of the country at different racetracks, what the equilibrium is. And so Speed and Class attempts to break down speed. You got to have speed. Speed wins the race.
Yeah, fastest horse wins, right?
Yeah, but it does not necessarily mean you look at the last speed rating of the horse and say they're going to win. There could have been a lot of factors that reason why they got that rating. They could have been racing against weaker horses. The horse could have been racing against stronger horses, therefore didn't run as strong. And I'll get to that in a second. That's class. And so class means, and I won't go super deep into this. I'll briefly,
give us a real basic explanation between speed and class and how they come up with that. Is it based on? Because that was my question was, how is the speed ranking determined? Is it based on just a pace car that this is what the fastest horse that's ever done it did it in, and this is kind of what your time were on this distance, and or what? Like, how do they come up with those analytics? Massive
amount of data dump of time run on varying conditions at every racetrack in the world.
Okay.
So it's your finishing time. So what they try and compile out of that speed rating is what type of track they were on. Don't ask me to get into that, but there's different types of actual surface, that they race on. There's different conditions. It could have been muddy, really sloppy muddy that day, and it's factored into that. So anyway, all that's thrown together, speed rating spits out, and that way on that day at that track, everyone that raced that time would have the same speed rating. But now that other horse, same thing. They're all coming together, and let's say the horse speed ratings, and I'll show those here shortly, they're all 90. Okay, so then the last race, they all are coming into this race off of a 90 speed rating, which means you can gauge what kind of form they're into. Are they running their top speed ratings right now? Are they running their worst speed ratings? They're a highly trained athlete that runs in forms and cycles,
right?
Just like anybody else. So
yeah, I think that's the part that does get overlooked is that they do train, and it's a rigorous training program, and they're coached up just like some of these other athletes. They're just phenomenally more athletic because of the size and this. Some of the things that go on.
Their training events are actually posted on all this data that you can actually see every day. Their times the day against other people.
This is an interesting thing about, and this is it's just jumping out to me that it's nothing. It's not like anything else. There's not another sport that you can bet on that is giving you this data to be able to create your own bets. I mean, can you imagine if baseball or basketball or hockey or golf or anything on the app itself was giving you all of these different categories to be able to analyze and to see, like, for example, the PGA Championships coming up this weekend. And we're sitting here talking about who could play well in this course and that course. You look at the course set up, and that's what Scott does a lot of that. He does a lot of research on the courses, the players that play well in these courses. I mean, it's long drivers that drive the ball straight that do this. But he has to go out and create that. He has to do that research on his own. That's independent research, and he has to compile it from multiple places and multiple sources. TwinSpire's got it all right there. And like you said, we'll look at that in a second, and you're going to actually show us what it looks like so that we can kind of understand all of the things that we have access to when it comes to betting on horses. But that's not like any other sport. That's amazing to me that they would give you that amount of information for free.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah,
that's crazy.
You just got to learn how to do what you will with it. But they're trying to do it to create some transparency as well too, because they have been faced with cheating scandals, etc. But what sport hasn't?
Right. What sport hasn't?
So it wouldn't be sporting if there wasn't cheating.
Right.
So,
well, there's okay. So, all right. So we talked about speed. Now, the class category seems completely arbitrary to me because I don't know. I'm going to
have to give a brief, and I'll go super brief on this because there's people that have done tons of research on it. But being the fact that horses are what you call herd animals. In other words, if you know what a herd animal is, there's always one leader, and the leader will go to the end, and every other horse chases to that leader. Okay, so they create a natural pecking order, and throughout their lives of I'm better than this horse, and like I said, part of they're bred to not like their other thoroughbreds, really.
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
you don't put two of them really together. Occasionally they like them, you pair them up, but they don't like each other. They don't. And so classes mean
it's the animal. They're animals. Let's not forget.
So it's done years of breeding and training and stats that say when this horse has a history of facing this horse and they are neck and neck, the one with more class is always going to beat the other horse. They will succumb to the higher class horse
so you have to have a sense of the animal kingdom a little bit to understand that. If I hunt a lot, and I understand the pecking order of turkeys and deer and some of these other animals and how they behave and why they behave that way. That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying that the class of a horse could be more bloodline related than anything that's ever, because they necessarily don't remember racing against a horse before. Like, but
so I'll say this.
Do they know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When they're young, so the thing that makes the Preakness, Derby, and Belmont special is that it's all 2-year-olds, which means that's their first racing year. They're 2 years old.
Okay.
So when they're young, the only thing they have to go by is their breeding. So yes, all the class ratings initially start by breeding. Now, whether the horses know that or not, or whether they're, just think of a family. Let's say, two of the top athletes in the world have a child. They might have a kid that just is that kid that just doesn't really care. Just
yeah. He
honestly,
he might just want to play music and
correct
or something, right?
Yeah. So so as they start off with their class related to their breeding, and then over time they develop their own rating based on how they do against others.
Before they've ever raced, their ranking is based. It's like, okay, Sabrina and LeBron had a kid. That kid's, because of the two parents, is expected to do well, and so they're ranked higher, and that's the class rating.
So this brings in another aspect. So that's where they're sold. You'll see at Kentucky Derby and at the Preakness when they show the winner and the owners, there might be 20 winners because that horse might have cost them $2 million, but there's also horses that cost 200. I mean,
right.
So,
but that's why, though, correct?
The breeding initially, when they're bought at birth, their price is dependent upon their parents, for sure.
Right. But then let's say somebody comes out of nowhere, you get a 20-1 that wins one of these races out of nowhere. Now all of a sudden his price goes up because of the possibility of breeding him down the road, correct?
The Derby, that's beautifully said. The Derby is a great example. The Mage horse, I mean, he wasn't a cheap horse. He was $160,000, as a yearling, they call it, as a baby. And then when they won the Derby, well, just for that race, they won $1.6 million.
Right.
And right there's because the Kentucky Derby winner
paid for.
Who knows at this? I mean, they wouldn't put him at the breed just yet.
No, you gotta milk that and let it, you gotta slow burn that.
There's a timing thing, just like retirement.
Yeah, for sure. It's all business at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's all business at every point, right?
Wouldn't he still be building up his class too? And then maybe when is it what their class is rated at when they're before they're put out the stag is probably affects their price?
So you'll see the races, each race is graded. When I say graded, it's given a ranking, each style, and there's about 6 different styles of races by their ranking, and then there's dollar amounts within those rankings. Being like the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness are the top rank. So the class then is created by how they do it, that rank race versus the other people in that race.
That's how they get the class.
The class, yes. So think of it like your golf handicap.
It's like how did he live up to his expected result? You got this class, you got this because, like you said, I showed up as a 6 handicap. Well, how many times did you shoot 90 trying to, say that you're a 6 handicap, right? But if you show up and you shoot 75, 76, 78, then they're going, okay, he's a legit 6 handicap. His class ranking goes up. So if you prove what they expected out of you, your class ranking goes up. But if they expected more than you're producing, your class ranking goes down.
That's correct.
Okay. So with those two things being said, what I would like to do before we get into the actual the app and what it looks like on there is I want to explain the speed and class betting system a little bit. So the way that the video explained it to me, and you can correct me if I butcher this. You look at the speed of the number one ranked horse, the favorite of the horse. If the distance between their ranking and the number 2 horse is more than 4, so a spread of 4, then that's something that you feel comfortable with. If it is a 4, you move to the class ranking and you do the same analysis. You look at the favorite, you click on that column. If they have a larger than 4 spread between their ranking in class and the second place or the number 2 odds horse, then now you've got something that you feel comfortable in picking that horse to win.
Where are you coming up with that?
That's what the video. That's just
4.
what the video said.
No.
That's that he said 4 was his rule of thumb, and I didn't know if he came up with that out of his ass or if that was
the explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was just curious, is that is that an arbitrary
No,
number? Have you it's like do you expect it to be this or that?
Yeah, we could be in there.
I think that was
an
what the variance was. If it was that much of a difference between that horse and the other horse, then you would feel comfortable with that one horse.
Right.
You need to have at least that differential is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, if you've got a 91 on speed and the horse that's got the second best odds has a 84 speed, then you've got that covered. That 4 is covered. And you go over to this class, they got a 91 class, and then number 2 is an 85 class. But you've got them covered on both of those categories. Let that bet rip. Now, if you've got maybe a 2 spread on speed and a 2 or 3 on class, maybe you don't feel as comfortable betting that horse to win.
So yeah, this whole thing ranks all the horses at the end of all the data on this free stuff. We'll show you current speed, back speed, current class, back class, just to kind of show you the backside of maybe the current form's good. Maybe they're on the back half of the form, or maybe, if they could run a 100 8 races ago, but right now they're only running like 85s. There's that 100 in them somewhere,
Yeah,
they might just
for
show
sure.
up this race. Yeah,
For sure. All right. Well, then I think this is a good opportunity. What I want to do is if you don't mind, Scott, I want you to, let's look at what you're actually doing when you get on to the twinspire.com app and you're starting to look at these analytics and you're pulling it up. I want to actually look at what you're looking at and then so that you can kind of explain some of these things and give some people a couple of tips on what they can do to try to use this analytics to their advantage. Does that sound good?
sounds good.
All right, cool. Let's get that pulled up. All right, cool. So we're looking at Twin Spires right now. Tell me what we're looking at right now.
All right. Pretty simple format here. This is on my computer, but I normally just use the app on my phone. I actually like the format better and more user friendly, easier to bet. And
Okay.
good
to know.
There, yeah. So you go down here. So if this were Saturday, or actually we probably can go to that day. We could probably change the day, but I don't know how to on here, but it doesn't matter. All right, so race 13 Pimlico for today. Down here is all your horses. So this race, if you scroll down here, has 12 horses, which is more than the Preakness, which only has 8.
Interesting.
Quick side note, Scott, I wanted to talk real quick. I don't know, Scott, if you want to bring up why there's so few horses compared to, say, the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness.
Well, it's traditionally a smaller field. And as of late, I believe from talking to you that a lot of the trainers used to find that 2 weeks off was plenty enough time for recovery. Now traveling all the way to New York from Kentucky, It's just not realistic. They don't want to risk their investment in probably some high dollar horses. That's why you're only going to see one of these horses that's in the field actually ran in the Kentucky Derby, and that's only because it's the winner, and he's probably going for the Triple Crown.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the Triple Crown is winning the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. And there's an extra prize. I think it's currently sitting around $5-6 million. So, it's there's a chunk of change at the end of that rainbow if you can navigate
Some legendary status.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
and legendary status too. Correct. So, it was a good summary. So what you're seeing as a result of that is trainers targeting certain races. For example, there's a horse in this race. We were talking about in the sidebar. At the 7. He's in the 7
Blazing
hole.
Sevens.
Blazing 7. And trainers skip the Kentucky Derby to target the Preakness to win. So, you have another little trainer angle there, as well as the 7. So, but yeah, so this is the format. You get all the horses here. There's tons of information. Like, for example, this horse is 19-1, as you see on this. Jockey, trainer, mom, dad, all kinds of stuff up here. So if you want to make a simple bet, let's walk through this real super quick. If I want to bet on the 1 to win, I click on him in the box here. It's already in it. It's defaulted to the win. Dollar amount, 5. And then like I said, it builds your ticket over here on the right-hand side. That's what a ticket would look like if you actually went to the window.
Okay.
And it's telling you there, 5 to win. It's what the ticket would look like. Submit bet. It might have a little warning there saying, "Are you sure you want to do it?" Boom.
Okay.
You're in.
So you click that, and it sends you some more information. Correct.
Correct. Once you send it, you can't change it though. I mean, it's written in stone.
Right.
No
Okay.
cash
So,
out.
all right. So once I submit that bet, what kind of information am I going to get?
Well, I turned off probably a lot of it because I got annoyed. So I'm not up to speed on what all current notifications, but I'm sure you can get a text alert or an email or both.
Right, but you were getting a PDF that had some information on the
at the
horses.
bottom
Those
on
are
the
pre-race.
app.
Right.
Well, actually, at the bottom on the app on the phone, I don't know where it is on this. There's a whole section called My Bet. So just like on FanDuel, all those somewhere on the bottom, and it has a summary of all your current wagers and then how you did. Recent, settled,
Right.
just
all
like
that stuff.
pretty self-explanatory. And then it cashes you out pretty simultaneously. And all this is tied to, like, I have it tied to my bank. You can have it tied to PayPal, a lot of different things.
Okay, but you were showing me a PDF a minute ago that had a lot of information on the horses, each individual horse, all of their previous statistics, some of the results of their workouts, etc. Pull that up if you don't mind.
All right, so if you're on this site though, and you can get it under here under handicapping free PPs.
Mm-hmm.
PPs, it means past performances, and that's where all that data that I discussed is.
Okay.
I can't access it here. Well, I can because it takes you off this site into another one. We have to log in, but it is all free. Once you set that login up, it'll pull in it every time. You don't have to redo that every time. So,
okay. Cool.
So like on my phone, I can pull up all the information, and this is what it looks like, roughly. So this would be an example of what all the information is going to look like, and it just has a summary. This is race 1, Pimlico. This is actually Saturday, May 20th. So it's the day of the Preakness. And this is race 1. It actually is summarizing the horses in the race, their last 3 speed races. Prime Power is what Brisnet.com uses to summarize. It's kind of their rating, their ranking. Class rating, best speed at distance. So you'll go down here. This is this horse, number 1, Tauber. All the information, like I said, I love in this box right here. It has bullet points that have some good or bad things. Right over here is your speed rating that we talked about in bold. You see it says SPD. So it starts at the top most recent race, last race, to all the way to the bottom. The furthest away race on this list, not necessarily in their career. So there's your speed ratings.
So it's more similar to like a golf handicap. Your most
That's
recent
correct.
scores,
Yeah.
right?
It's only showing last 10. Yeah. I think that's the same as golf, right? And
best 8
so yeah,
out of last 20 or something.
The top is the most recent race, and it's all across that horizontal line. So it tells you the date of that race, distance, all the fractions, that where he finished, 11th, 13 lengths back, jockey.
I've got a question, Kevin. My question is this: in baseball is an analytics sport. It's all, I mean, statistical numbers, and that's the best way to kind of dial in your bets. With all this analytics and all this information, do the results ring true for the most part based on past performances? I mean, obviously there's the caveat that they are animals, and they're, you can't necessarily determine all the different variables there. But for the most part, when you start looking at these analytics, do they ring true?
So I would say they ring more true for the quality of horses you're going to be wagering on in the Black-Eyed Susan or the Preakness or the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup race, all the big races. That's because those horses are there to win that race. It's not a tune-up race. It's not a training tool. It's not, that is specifically targeted. They are there to win that race. Every horse is in that race to win that race. I know that sounds funny that maybe in some of the other lower class races, they're not there to win the race, but if they win, they win. That's great. The horse does great.
Right. But you've mentioned before that they do enter into other races as workouts and as the practice and training and to build
not
up
these
to
horses, not this
Preakness
level.
Okay, so not this level.
Yeah.
So where do these horses practice?
Well, they're usually stabled somewhere. And that's usually where they call home. Like, so let's see where it is on it. Well,
so is it not uncommon for a horse to go out to one of these races and to have very few races with other horses, or do they train with other horses at that stable or whatever?
Well, most of these, if you look down here, I showed you the training times down here. Like, for example, on that day, he trained with 42 other horses. On that day, there were 42 other horses. There might have been more than that. Just didn't do recorded times, just working out, running around, not getting clocked.
Okay, so they're very familiar with running around other animals. This isn't like you're
for sure.
The aspect of a horse getting spooked or not being able to perform because there's other horses and they're not used to it is not necessarily something. Excuse me, not necessarily something that you're concerned about.
No, and there's really kind of no way to predict other than past history of horses that are very anxious and act up, around other horses.
I understand that.
And there's some that are obviously a lot calmer, just like humans.
Right.
And,
right.
but some of the act up horses can be some of the best horses out there. I mean,
I understand.
When it's game time, they're assholes until it's game time.
I understand that. I've known a lot of guys like that. There's no doubt about it, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I've known some dudes that were like that. Thank you for taking us through that. Thank you for showing us through that. And obviously, if you were to go physically to a race, you would probably get handed a program that had a lot of that information, but not necessarily to the detail that you just showed. And it just kind of goes back to the fact of like, there's no other sport that gives you that amount of information on, think about it. If you had all the different analytics of, Jacob deGrom's bullpens and, or something like, or batting practice sessions or all of this. I mean, we've got statistics on games played, but it looks like in horse racing, you've got statistics on races, but not only that, you've got training sessions, you've got all of the, their bloodline, all of these different things that are analyzed to the nth degree, which is interesting as hell to me. It definitely makes me want to dig into it some more, but I kind of want to try to wrap this thing up, and I want to focus in on two things. One, I want to talk about who you think is going to win the Preakness Stakes here this Saturday. And the second thing that I want to know before we get into that prediction is sort of, well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. What the fuck is a black-eyed Susan?
All right, you want to talk about black-eyed? So black-eyed Susan is a flower.
Okay.
It looks a lot like a daisy, but it's a specific type of daisy.
What's it got to do with horse racing?
I think it's
Just the name of the race.
I think it's native to that area of Maryland or whatever, or something like that.
But this black-eyed
that's-
Susan race is a big deal, and I don't even know why it's what's special about it. Is it different horses or something?
So it's race 13 the day before. It's on Friday, and most of these big races have a day before event that's pretty big on its own. And what it features is the fillies doing the same type of requirements as the Derby and Preakness horses, but they're all female in that race as a requirement. Now the females or the fillies can race in the big race and with the males too, but they don't have a strong history of winning over the years, although it has been done. And so yeah, that's the story on that. And the Kentucky Derby has the Oaks the day before, and that's on Friday. So it is race.
So do you
13.
think that one of the males would how would one of the males that maybe, let's say, a male that wasn't doing as well in his races went to race the black-eyed Susan, how would he do in that race?
Well, that's a tough question to put me on the spot there, my friend.
I'm just curious if it would be if how a male
honestly,
horse would do in the female horse
depend
race.
on the quality of the female field more than the quality of the male field. And I think what I mean by that is usually, there's some really cream of the crop females that it doesn't really matter. They're just solid horses on their own. And then there's others that just have to be in female horse races to win. This is a class perspective issue as well, too. So there's some fillies that can rise above the class,
because you get the girls racing in the guys race, but you don't get the opposite. So I was just wondering if they ever got their feelings hurt or, wanted to
answer the question.
No, yeah, I'm just busting balls right now. So you said that the same, they do this at every major race. Like, so there's the version of this at the Kentucky Derby you said was the Oaks. So they do a race that is the kind of pinnacle of the female race at one of these things, and it's usually the day before. Because I was looking at the website for the Preakness, and if you're in the Baltimore, Maryland area, and it sounds like they've got a lot going on, concerts and races both days, and it just seems like a big time. Now, I've never been to anything other than, the steeplechase here in Nashville, but it seems like it's a big party. But if you're in Maryland, go nuts, go watch some horses. But what do you think would be what are your three? Like, when you focus on betting on horses, what are your go-tos? Give me three little nuggets I can walk away with and say, hey, I'm a beginner horse better, but this is where I'm going to start.
So I always look for value. I'm not where I was back in the day, and I don't think anyone in this audience would ever be. You want to just bet the big race. So I'm looking for some value. I'm not looking to collect 20 cents on the dollar, betting the chalk or the heavy favorite.
Right. Understand.
So I'm looking for value. That's the only way on these type of races you're going to win money, and which means you're not necessarily going to pick the winner, but there are ways to win money. And so I look for, in that, obviously speed's huge. A lot of times I look for not current speed, but that back speed that I talked about. Look for a horse that might not, might be on the mend, that has the chance to do better than their last few races. So that's what I'm looking for. And a lot of times it helps to have, in that little summary section, there's a lot of angles that they mention in there in their bullet points that are important. Like, I love trainer jockey combos. That's the trainer and the jockey hook up with high win percentages. Man, those are. I don't mean to
throw another wrench in Jim, but that brings up something else, because, like I said, I don't know much about this, but one of the things that I've always heard is the jockey matters a lot, right? So talk to me about, when you look at the horses, you've got all this information on the horses. There's jockeys that get on horses that win frequently. There's a reason for that, right?
Yes, and it's just think of it like any other sport. Again, think of it like an sports agent. They get the best athletes, but that's not always the case. But typically, because at one point in their career, they were the best at their job. And jockeys are no different. And so jockeys, the best jockeys get the best mounts, and sometimes that may be a jockey that's on the tail end and the up and comers trying to steal some of his mounts over time, but it's going to take a while for the up and coming jockey to earn the top mount.
So do you look for that? Do you look and say, hey, there's a couple? Do you look to see who's riding which horse and say, hey, this guy's got a track record of winning? There's a reason why this guy's won A, B, and C races. He's got 3 derbies. He's got a couple of Preakness. He's got a couple of Belmonts. This guy doesn't get on a horse that's not expected to win. How much does that weigh into
golf? In some jockeys, all jockeys have a home course. Now, for the big races, they travel away for those big races, but they have a home course. So they're obviously, some jockeys have their home course that they're much better at, and this happens to have the big race be at their home course. And there's stats out there for that.
Cool. All right. So that answers my question on that.
And that's actually man, if you can get on a big angle on jockeys in certain situations, I think it's huge too. Also, the other important factor, some jockeys give up if their horse isn't going to win. Other jockeys love to grind it out.
Yeah. I always like the documentaries about the relationship with the jockeys and their, the horses and all the stuff. Cause it's, they're the ones riding the horse. They've got they know the horse the best.
Yeah, and I think that's what they don't do the very good job of horse racing in general, and why, people kind of lost touch with it, is there's a ton of good personal stories out there. They just don't get it out to the public very good.
There's too many other stories in horse racing that are I think sexier from a publication standpoint. You talk about horses and the all the injections and the way that they're treated and the health and all the things and the rigorous training and all the things that goes into horse racing, the testing and the millionaires and the billionaires that are in this business that take a lot of the limelight. But you're right. Horses are one of the few animals that have real relationships with human beings, and they are great. There's a lot of heartwarming stories, but in that world that I think get overshadowed, and that's probably for another time. But I'm looking for value. I'm looking for the jockeys and the horse matchups. What else am I looking at?
I think class is important, but I think really only true big anomalies in class, like either way high or way in over their head, need to be looked at. I wouldn't really get into the minutia. So that's where your guys' theory about the 6 or being 4 or whatever away. Right. I think class is a bit more important in that regard than, say, speed. I know that sounds funny, but I just don't think there's a lot of variance in that middle zone. So, but the outliers. So only if there's an outlier would I really put class into the equation. So I go mostly speed, trainer, jockey, angles, and again, this all goes back to, and this is kind of the art form of it. I like to find a horse that's coming into that isn't this isn't all the hype horse. Kind of a little bit untalked about, Jim. That's going to make a leap forward in the race.
You're like an up-and-comer. You like somebody that's not getting all the publicity. You like somebody
and there's ways to do that
a little under the radar.
Back speed, back class.
Horses that typically that run well in the back of the pack. Like there's all these little statistics that I've been looking at and I've been noticing that about horses. You look at, I understand baseball and basketball and football stats. I understand hockey stats. I understand soccer stats. But their stats, when you dig into them, at first look, they might not mean that much to you. But when you really dig into what they're saying, hey, this horse might be in a shitty spot, right? They might not be able to bust out and be a front runner, but they have a history of being good from the back and then having late pushes. So they might do better out of that, that 6 hole or that 8 hole or whatever it might be. And all of that stuff's in there. And I think that that's an amazing thing. So I really look forward to digging into this. I'm definitely going to expose our guy, Kevin Boyle, to this, because this is something that's right up his alley. And as soon as he gets into this, he's going to want you to have you back, and we're going to have to dig down a little bit deeper. We'll talk about exactas. We'll talk about trifectas. We'll talk about all of this stuff.
About this.
And I know that you're here for it. That's why I love you, Kev. So before we get out of here, I want to thank you again for being here with us. This has been extremely educational for me. I apologize in advance for all the text messages that you're going to receive with me asking you questions about this race coming up on Saturday. But Scott, also thank you for helping kind of keep us together here, because obviously I don't know anything about horses, but I appreciate you being here to help us out. So before we leave, the top 3 favorites for the Preakness on Saturday are Mage at 8-5, First Mission at 5-2, and National Treasure at 4-1. And let's not forget about our favorite little outlier, Blazing Sevens, that just so happens to be in the 7 spot, which kind of got to mean something, right? Lucky Sevens. What do you think, Scott? What do you got? Let's pick winners and let's go from there.
I think I'm taking First Mission on the outright.
First Mission with the outright win. Is it statistical, or is that your gut?
A little bit statistical. He's not far off on speed as compared to Mage. He gives you a little bit better value. Mage is obviously a heavy favorite. But I might
you talk about value. If I bet $100 on Mage and win my 8-5, or I bet $100 on First Mission and lose, my return on my money is a lot better than return on yours. So we talk about because 5-2 is not all that much better than 8-5. We're still laying a lot of chalk to pick First Mission. So I guess my question would be, how much value is in there? Do you say, hey, or is this one of those situations where you go, hey, I think it's going to be a combo of these two, and then it could be the other 2 or 3?
I think I'm going to try 2 of the top.
All right, you ready for me? Is he stuck?
Can you hear me?
Hang on a second. I got I just froze for a second.
Can't hear you, man.
Yeah, I just froze. So go back to Scott. Back to you where you started from.
I like First Mission on the outright. It's a little bit better value than Mage, but I'm really probably trying to look to bet those 2 horses to finish in the top 3.
Okay. I mean, I guess my question would be how, just picking somebody that's in that middle of the group is it better to do a bet that includes the first, second, and third if you think that somebody like Blazing Sevens is going to actually creep up into the top 3? How do you take some of those bottom guys that you think are going to overperform maybe where they're at odds wise? What's the best way to bet those types of horses?
Trifecta.
A trifecta is the first, second, and third.
Yeah. So what you're going to do in this case, so let's take Scott. So Scott was saying First Mission, right? And then who'd you like on the back half? Like who else?
My top 3 would be First Mission, Mage, and Red Route 1.
Okay, so you could what you call trifecta box that. And that's going to be for the minimum bet a $12 bet and that covers every combination between those 3 horses to finish first.
So it's like a round robin. Okay.
Yeah. So think of it at $1, times 12. It's 12 combinations with the 3 horse. All right.
Okay.
So it's $12 to bet that bet at a minimum of $1. So
and what
you can bet-
would the odds of that working out be? Like you bet if
Well,
if
it's
it
really
happened,
going to depend on what happens out of that, but they would probably get my guesstimate on those 3 horses would average probably around so I'm going off the base of the $1 though. Gotcha.
okay. No, I'm just starting to like the
Yeah.
odds on it. What would the odds
so
on hitting that
That would be
trifecta
probably
be?
like it would probably be like 75 to 1.
Okay, so we're talking like plus 750 to hit that trifecta with the 3
Yeah.
favorites. If you box the 3 favorites, you're still looking at plus 750. So
Correct.
your
Minus the
dollar,
$7,500 plus 7,500. 75 to 1 is 7,500.
okay,
Yes, correct.
so plus
Yeah.
7,500. So that's still fantastic odds.
Minus
if you think
a $12 spend. This
Right.
is where I'm going to get into really how you bet these races to get the most value from a wagering standpoint. So what you do is, so to show you the difference. So let's say he won let's say he hit $75 minus the 12. So he's got,
$63.
$53. So no, 63.
Yeah, $63.
$63. I thought you said 53. $63. So let's say instead he was really confident that his which horse, the first
That
whatever.
first mission
First
was going to
mission.
win.
First mission was going to win. Okay. So he likes that horse the most. And then he takes them so he does what he calls that horse first. So he's only got that horse in first. That horse has to come in first. And then every other horse to come in second or third. So that reduces the combinations to 6. So it pays the same, but he only has to pay $6 for that bet instead of 12.
Yeah,
But
but
the
first
stipulation-
mission has to win.
Correct.
So to mitigate that, because you could effectively put 4 different, you could put down 2 or 3 different trifectas, including different variations of of
But
horses,
this covers
and
what I was
cover
about to-
and cover 75% of the field, and still
It's
make
what-
money.
This is what I was going to cover on my bet, in the fact of, and this is how you're able to do some creative things. Like, for example, I don't think the longest shot in the field, Chase the Chaos, is a terrible bet. But I don't necessarily think he's going to win, but I think he has a real shot to make a run late and finish third or second.
Right. That's a value
so
play. That's rule number 1. Find some value.
So you would bet, let's say I like first mission like Scott in top, and maybe even throw some money on third on this horse because it doesn't cost me a lot of money. Whereas if I box that horse, it would cost me a lot more money.
Right. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
All right. So if I can boil this down to, like, there are ways to mitigate some of this risk, to include more horses than just the favorites, to try to find some value in the creativity in which you place your bets. Because we're not talking about, you're not going to have to lay a lot of money to be able to get a big return with the odds being the way that they are. If you're willing to play the trifecta bets, you're willing to box it, and you're willing to do some of these things that you can do. I want to remind everybody that twinspire.com is the only online platform if you're in Tennessee. Now, if you're outside of Tennessee, I don't know what you can do and where you can do it. I'm sure that you can probably go and figure out a way to bet on horses somewhere close to you. But if you're in Tennessee and you want to bet online, twinspire.com, who is backed by the Churchill Downs, as Kevin mentioned, is the way to do that. I've looked at the website. It looks pretty easy to navigate. The app on the phone, as Kevin said, is a little bit easier to navigate, a little bit easier to find the information that you're looking for. But at any rate, the 148th Preakness Stakes at Pimlico Racecourse in Baltimore, Maryland, this Saturday, May 20th. I look forward to seeing. And now I've got a lot more reason to tune in and to watch a lot more races online, because they don't play anything but the 13th race on TV. But there's a lot of reason to pay attention to all of the races. look at the details, look at the information, and there's a lot of ways to make money. And I think that it's a blast to learn new stuff. Kevin, again, dude, thank you so much for being here and expanding our horizons and teaching us about this. As we get more into it and start to do it, all that's going to do is generate more questions. So we look forward to having you back to answer those questions and to show us some more tips and maybe do a little bit deeper dive on some of these things and some of the stuff that you've talked about, boxing, exactas, all of these types of things. I look forward to it. But
and usually the Belmont's a great betting rate. So that's the next one after this.
I look forward. Let's go ahead and pencil this thing in. Let's do another conversation before the Belmont Stakes, and we can talk about what happened in the Preakness. We can talk about some of the other things, and I think this is something that we should keep doing because I think that's great. So let's keep doing that. Thank you guys for being here. You guys are amazing. Like I said, 148th Preakness Stakes this Saturday. Go make you some money. Go follow us on all the social media platforms at Nashville Stash and tell all your friends about it. We look forward to seeing you next time. This is StacheCast. Until then, be good, be well. StacheCast out.
Yeah, on your UFO. I've been on some other shit, just lost my fucking brother shit. Now I think it's time to beam myself back to the mothership. J-Rock is my co-pilot, that's the one that I hover with. Love the way we stubborn, like we rule our own government. We come through so thunderous, like everybody else is under us. I might go like a